So hi guys, welcome to Men Don't Talk United. It feels like it's been a while, but raring to go again. Obviously, some of us here in the UK just got over half term. Not much difference in terms of the pandemic because most people would have just stayed at home, so there's not that much difference. But today I'm really delighted and thankful to say I've got a Olympian, I could call it that. I think I called him a former Olympian, but actually he put me right when he says once an Olympian, always an Olympian. So thank you for that. So Tawanda Chiwira, you specialize in the 400 meters and appeared at the 1997 World Championships, Summer Olympics, I guess I could say it, World Championships, but correct me if I'm wrong. So you're a bit of a celebrity, if I could put it that, in terms of having been on the world stage. Really good to have you on. So give you the opportunity to just kind of tell people a little bit about yourself and hear it from you.
Yeah, as you said, my name is Tawanda Chiwira. I don't know if I used to be known, if I'm still known as an athlete. I used to run the 400. Interestingly enough, before I ran the 400, before I left Zimbabwe to go to the States, I ran the 100 and 200. But that was changed obviously when we went to the States. So I specialized in the 4. I did compete in the World Championships, 2 actually, in 1995 in Sweden, Gothenburg, and 97 in Athens, Greece. I'm a 2-time Olympian. That's 96 Atlanta, USA, and or should I say the controversial Atlanta, USA in terms of the elections, US elections, and also Sydney 2000. And they were brilliant experiences. I've competed in other major championships, but those are the ones that are known, things like African Championships, All Africa Games as well. The first one being in Harare, Zimbabwe in 1995 as well. So yeah, I've been blessed to have the opportunity to compete a lot in a lot of different events, major sporting events and stuff. And I went to the US on an athletic scholarship. I was blessed to get an athletic scholarship, which afforded me an education to supplement my running as well. So at least when I was done with running, I still had an education to fall back on. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah. And that's really great. And you can see I've also done my Zimbabwean colors, just to showcase that kinship, the brotherhood.
I would have worn one of my tracksuits, something.
That would have been great. I think you missed the memo on that one. But it's all right. We'll forgive you. We'll forgive you.
Yeah.
But I think what was really keen is obviously a massive privilege to be able to to speak to you in this sort of format, just to kind of give people a bit more of a background about yourself. But I really wanted to, and I think maybe the viewers will want to know a little bit more about kind of, and I know you started this kind of, I say delving into like a podcast around sort of like sports and sort of mental health. So,
yeah.
And I know that's probably just just touching on that slightly in terms of the bigger picture. But I wondered if you wanted to maybe talk a bit more about that and kind of how you found sort of maybe setting that up, or some of the conversations you've had. How that's been.
Yeah, so the last Olympics that I competed in was Sydney 2000, and last year Tokyo 2020 was the 20-year anniversary of me competing in the Olympics. So with everything going on, I thought, in order to help myself, my mental being, and to get closure, and we can talk about closure, why I'm saying closure later or whenever. But, just to get closure, let me revisit the Olympics and also speak to athletes who've competed at the Olympics and current athletes as well. And I'm currently living my athletics career through other people as well. So when I catch up, so some of my podcasts, I've spoken to sprinters, past and present, and I continue to do that. And we look at the mental aspect of their training and their performance as well. So this is helping me overcome 20 years since I last competed at the Olympics. Don't get me wrong, my last competitive major event was 2002 at the Manchester Commonwealth Games, but I thought that it would be befitting to speak to former Olympians I'm saying former Olympians, to speak to Olympians who last competed, yeah, well, because of the Olympics. So 20 years, I thought this was a good time. And then it was postponed, and I was at school as well. And I thought I'll continue it this year. So I've started it this year. I've spoken to a few people, and I'll continue to do that. So it's mainly been helped. The catalyst has been the Olympics.
Yeah.
And this is what's led me to speak to people. And believe it or not, it is taking me 20 years, or shall I say 18 plus, to actually get over me stopping competing. So this is my therapy, so to speak.
Wow. So and I think there's quite a lot in that. There's quite a lot of that, because I know there'll be a few people watching this that perhaps don't have that professional background, if you want to call it that. And I always feel like, me myself being an avid sports person, somebody that's played, rugby at a high level when I was at school, a little bit at university, is that, sometimes you see people on TV, you're just like, they're things that you're not seeing. So the mental aspect. So, and I hope people, we'll put some details of your podcast at the end of this, so people can obviously go to that and, watch your videos and your podcasts and stuff. But it's, and I think people don't understand the amount of mental strength that's required. And sometimes you don't, as you say, you don't necessarily realize it until later on. And to a certain extent, it's a lot like life, isn't it? It's just like, they say the older you get, the more mature you get, because you learn so many things that you had before. But I'm just wondering, people would be watching this and just be saying, well, well, then how did you cope, during that process? So from what you're seeing now, is there anything that you have seen sort of back in the time when you were competing that you look back and say, how in the world did I get over that kind of mental piece? Or because obviously I'm sure there were so many different. I mean, you traveled all around the world. Different cultures, different acclimatizing to so many different things, whether it be weather conditions, rules, or whatever. And it's like, and I mean, I don't know, but it's like, I would guess to an extent there was never really any sort of mental health, like a mental health person that would look after you. So yeah, so I just wondered if there was anything you could sort of look back, even if it's any specific moment that you could share in terms of how you were able to deal with certain things, or was it just a case of, do you know what, I really had no time to process it, so I just got on with things?
Initially my rise in athletics, it was a phenomenal rise. I started running and getting better and better, and that's what led me to going on a scholarship at the States. So still, my mentality was, just get better, and my performances were improving as well. So in my mind, sky was the limit. I could walk and think, oh, you know what, that branch is quite high. I bet you I can touch that branch, because I had a lot of confidence in myself. Or I'll be told to work out and I'll think, can I do that? And, I would do it because mentally I was driven. Now, what people don't know is you have the physical aspect of running. So I'm going to use this Usain Bolt as an example. He's a specimen. He can do it physically, but if he didn't have that mental capacity, he wouldn't have been able to achieve what he achieved. And the same goes with athletes. It's not just running. It's not just the physical. It's the mental. And there's a podcast where I talk about being physically capable, but not achieving what I wanted to achieve because my mental was not driving my physical. Mm-hmm. So going back to your question, initially when I swam, my first 2 years or so at university, I had that drive, that passion. I didn't really need someone else to prop up my confidence because it was self-driven. Mm. But where it took a turn was where you start putting pressure on yourself to do better when things start getting serious. Now, what you need to do is when you start crossing the line, you need someone, like from a mental health perspective, whether it's a sports psychologist or a coach, to kind of dial you back and put you on the straight and narrow,
Mm.
within that neutral zone. So you don't want extremes of both. You want to be put in that neutral zone to help you, to guide you,
Yeah.
to optimize your performance. So it was from about the third year of university onwards. So 1996 and 1997, those are my first 2 years. And you'll see that in my first 2 years, 1996, it was a Zimbabwe record in the 400 at the Olympics, even though I had some injuries prior to that. In 1997, at the time, it was a Zimbabwe record again in the 400, and another Zimbabwe record in the 4x400 meters, which still stands up to today.
Mm.
And it's only after that, went back. 1998 indoors was very, very good, and then I injured myself. And then after that, that's when the pressure started, get back into good physical health, get back to where I was, and go beyond. But that is where the pressure started. And when sometimes, well, a lot of the times in practice, performance was good, but executing it in actual competitions, that's when it started to falter. So what people don't know is you can be a prime specimen, but if you don't have that mental backing,
Yeah.
then it becomes a problem, and or shall I say a challenge. And there's even one instance where a very well-known sports writer, mentioned the failures of athletes in major competitions. And I said, why are you calling it a failure? And he said, did you win any medals? And I said, no. And he said, so you're a failure. So there's the internal mentality, and then the external mentality as well, and the perception of people. So I consider myself a failure for not getting a world championship medal or whatever, because of the training that I used to do and the feedback I used to do from my coaches. But from your introduction, the fact that I've traveled so much, and I've done so much from the outside looking in, there's a lot of people who tell me that I've done very, very well, and they look up to me, and they praise what I've done. But in yourself, if you're not happy, then it's hard to overcome.
Yeah.
That's why you see, depending on the level that you mentally think you are in, you will get disappointment. So someone will be disappointed from coming second. The other person who comes second will be so happy that they've achieved second.
Yeah.
There's some people who are happy with getting into a final, but there's some people who are not happy just getting into a final. So it's those levels, and it's working with the mentality as well.
Yeah, yeah, and that's another really good important point actually, because two things. I mean, you mentioned someone like Usain Bolt, and I know obviously people watching this will cast their minds back to just kind of how incredibly successful he is. But yeah, success is very different to different people. And when we look at in terms of, at least when I look at it as somebody that's competed, and obviously not on that kind of stage, but competed against anybody, is that when I was getting ready for a rugby match or whatever, you always had your pre-game nerves. I mean, obviously you've gone through the whole journey of what you've done to get to that point, playing rugby as a kid and stuff, but the nerves never go away. And I think Usain Bolt also attested to that. But it's funny, as you mentioned, because when you look at someone like Usain Bolt, you think, wow, that is somebody with an incredible amount of mental health, stamina, because the antics sort of pre-race, the lightning bolt actions, the high fives and the fist bumps with the volunteers and stuff like that, and then he just goes and smashes it, and to me that looks like somebody who had an incredible amount of mental mental health strength, whatever you want to call it, or good mental health. And then you also look at in terms of kind of the average Joe kind of now, in terms of how they deal with mental health. So one of the things that I always go on about on my podcast is I'm very much into golf, and I like being able to just go out and just play a bit of golf. Obviously not competitive. Well, it's a little bit competitive because when you're playing against somebody else, you always want to beat them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, just compare it to the average Joe and the fact that they're not able to go out and, because obviously in the UK now we're in lockdown, so they're not able to do that kind of stuff. So, it's difficult. But I just wanted to go back to the point that, mental health in terms of seeing a professional like yourself and how you've been able to deal with it. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about WIFU. And kind of like your journey. I was privileged to hear just a little bit of a snippet in terms of what you're going to be coming out with in terms of your podcast and what you have planned with things like WIFU. But I remember hearing something about your competitive streak and just your desire to win, which you talked about. I think you mentioned in that about how you always wanted to aim higher, you wanted to jump higher, or you wanted to achieve a certain feat. But you also mentioned that sometimes you would do I don't know whether it's exercises or particular sprints until you passed out. I think I remember you saying that. But I just wondered, kind of like in terms of your mental health, where were you in relation to that? I mean, I know you mentioned that you just always wanted to do the best, but just kind of. So when you talk about that, was mental health really not a thing? It was just kind of everything was totally geared towards winning, that you just didn't care about mental health. Is that it?
It depends on your definition of mental health, because mental health is having positivity and being able to act on that positivity. So when you're performing well, when someone looks at you, they will think that your mental health is great. And also when you're performing well, a lot of times you don't really think about, your mental health. It's only when things start going downhill that you start thinking, hey, wait, you start relating the two, whether it's causation or correlation, but, you start thinking about it. When I was performing well, I wasn't thinking about, the mental aspect of my running, because I could just do.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at not performing, that's when you start thinking, and maybe at the time you don't realize it. So when I wasn't competing well, I wasn't really thinking about, the other aspects of it. But upon reflection, that's what it was. So sometimes I would do race modeling, and sometimes they'll say, close your eyes, go through your race. So a good 400 meters will be 44 seconds, 45 seconds. So you're going through your race and, you're planning it and you're executing it. When I would do that, initially, I was executing when I was doing those mental race plans. But there came a time when, I'll close my eyes, whether it's when I'm going to bed or in the morning, or just sitting there in my own little space, my own meditative space. And I'll reach a blank after 100 meters, or I'll reach a blank after 200 meters. And I'll think, what's going on? This is mental. I should be able to just do it, but it wasn't happening.
Yeah.
So that's where the mental blocks were coming in. So that's when it really wasn't working. So initially, my mental health aspect didn't really play a part, because I was doing well anyway. So anybody who's doing well in everything, they're either thinking I can do better, or they're happy with how they are. But when you start going downhill, or when things are not working, that's when the mental, starts manifesting, becomes more and more and more.
Yeah.
So yes, with the podcast, what I talk about is how everything was a competition. So whether it was just me by myself, I would gauge a car and its speed and my speed, and I'll say, I'll get to a lamppost before the car, or I can jump so high. That's the competitive streak, and you're not competing with anyone but yourself. And now when you're race modeling and you're thinking about races and competing against others, knowing how others have done and everything, that's where the mental comes in. So when you start thinking too much as well, in my case, I'm speaking on my behalf, when you start thinking too much, that's when things start going against you,
Yeah.
and you really can't help yourself. This is in my case.
Yeah.
It's I wasn't executing, and also when I didn't execute a race, a lot of times you go back. They say you go back to the drawing board and look at what you've done wrong or what you can improve on. I'll go back to the drawing board, and where it may be one mistake or two mistakes, it ends up being 10 mistakes.
Right.
And it's just this uphill, this uphill battle. It's almost like a pyramid scheme. You're starting off with one problem, but you're making it two, and it's just doubling and doubling, doubling. And then all of a sudden you're just overwhelmed with so many problems in your mind that you just cannot cope.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think it's, I keep saying it's another good point because it is. And it's just, at the end of it, it's just, there's not actually that much difference in life for all of us, whether it's men or women. So, and whether you're on a high profile TV pundit or athlete or celebrity or whatever, we all deal with some kind of mental health. At the end of the day, we're all trying to perform in life. Whether you're somebody that, mows the lawn for a local park, to somebody who's a leader of the country. And I think what you're showing is just like, no matter what kind of level, yes, there's different levels of pressure, but actually at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and we've got different levels of pressure to deal with, and we're all navigating life. So I think that's a really important lesson for all of us to gauge. But I think, as I said, it was just really great to have somebody like yourself on there, because sometimes, as normal people, is we look up to certain people and we think, oh yeah, they're doing all these great things, on they've done all these great things because they've had the opportunity to do this, or they've been on TV, or they've competed like this. But actually, when we draw down to the simple things, we all have the same struggles because we want to achieve, and we're trying to deal with all the things that come in between. But I just wondered if you wanted to talk a bit about WIFU.
Yeah, so WIFU, as I was saying, my journey into this started from when I stopped running. And believe it or not, it may sound, people can interpret it however they want. But the fact that almost getting to the Olympics in 2004. So 2004, our relay team missed out by one or two places. Otherwise, we would have been in Athens, Greece, or I would have been in Athens, Greece as a three-time Olympian. So from 2004, when I stopped running, to 2021, this is how long it's taken me to start overcoming my demons of not competing, and my demons of realizing that I need to talk about this in order for me to, in order to help my journey to overcome. So I'm overcoming. Now, WIFU starts from the time that I used to run to the time that the first episode starts from the time that I started running to the time that I got to the States. We talk about the pressures of me running and how other people used to judge me. So I talk about when I ran in training, I used to leave everything on the line, or on the track. So at the end of each track session, if it was a hard session, you'll be picking me up to go to the car and then dropping me off at home. That's how hard I used to do it. That was my mentality. And then there was a situation where, I went to the States. That was my first workout. My track mates were laughing at me because I trained on that day like I used to do in Zimbabwe. But they were talking as if I was doing it to impress coach. But that's how I used to train.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when it used to be that when you would do that to me, I wouldn't just run to prove that I can run fast. You're setting a target, you're putting a target on your back for me to better you in what you do. So not only was I trying to run fast, but I was trying to make sure that everybody was making fun of me, I would beat them, so that there's nothing to talk about. And it also happened when I was in high school. I used to play football, I used to play rugby. I did a lot of sports, and the team sports, there's a lot of there's a lot of narcissism and favoritism. Now, if I think I'm good enough, which I am, and I'm not getting regular play in the team, or someone else is, is getting into the team because they're buying the teacher alcohol, or, sucking up to the teacher and everything, there's nothing you can do about that. And these are team sports. So I thought to myself, let me excel in individual sports. And if I'm the best, no one can say you're not on the team, because I'm beating everybody. So there's no justification for not having me on the team. And that's where that mentality came from. So, you can laugh at me or you can denigrate me, but if I'm beating you, your talking is just empty talking now, if you get where I'm coming from. Yeah. So WIFU is, when I said that from my junior year of university, I was talking about, the mental starting to take over negatively. And WIFU actually stands for what if I F up? And if I'll leave it to your imagination, but F is a 4-letter word. And it's all about, what happens if I F up? Now, it stems from me race planning, or even in practice. I'm going to go and run maybe 350 meters or 450 meters. And I know I'm supposed to run in a certain time. And before I even run, instead of saying, I'm going to do this, my mentality is, what if I mess up? So it's already giving you negative vibes.
Yeah.
Instead of just having positive vibes. So WIFU is all about setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
By saying, what if I mess up? And if you look at it, it translates to real life and business. Now, if an entrepreneur goes in and they're prepared for what they do and they know what they're doing, yes, a lot of businesses fail. But if you're an entrepreneur and you go into business saying, what if I mess up? You're almost setting yourself up for failure anyway, because you've got that self-defeatist attitude.
Yeah.
So WIFU, it's trying to overcome WIFU. So that's what I'm trying to do. So now from then on, I've just been, from the beginning, I've just been critical of myself and my capability and my ability to do things. And me talking about the WIFU journey and WIFU is helping me overcome that.
Yeah. And I think that's good, because it's kind of dealing with the elephant in the room before you even start up, isn't it? Because it's just, as you say, like, when you're starting out in sport and you're progressing and stuff, that mental side is not really sort of dealt with, because obviously, I mean, everybody wants to win. People want you to win and you want to win, but it's actually maybe making people understand that, look, okay, actually there's a positive side to this, because yes, you're trying to aim for this, and you're doing everything that's totally geared 150% towards doing that, but actually, yeah, you might mess up, because that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very positive thing to look at. I mean, it's something that I certainly speak to with my daughter. I mean, she's still young. She's not really at a competitive age yet, even though sometimes I think she's competitive. But it's like, I have a desire to get her into sport. But obviously, I want her to be successful in everything that she does. But it's making her understand, when the time is right, that look, it's okay to mess up, because actually what you're doing, everything that you're doing now, is gearing yourself to be successful. But not everything you do would necessarily be successful, even though you push yourself towards it. And also, I was going to ask you, with all this work, kind of, do you have sort of like a desired, objective to what you feel it might achieve? I mean, is it just something maybe personally for yourself that you might do through podcasts? But say, for example, do you have a ambition to kind of, in terms of the next generation coming up, whether it's here in Zimbabwe, is there anything you're doing in that sort of?
It's interesting that you ask, because I'll go back just a little bit, 1 or 2 steps. I was conversing with an athlete who used to run the 400 meters as well. He's a coach now. And this particular gentleman, he's got lots of Commonwealth Games medals. He's got Olympic medals. He's got World Championship medals. He's been there, done that. And I was just talking to him and about my story about just starting to overcome that abyss of 16 years.
Is this Ken Harden, by the way?
No, it's not.
Oh,
It's
right. Okay.
he's
Because I was
from a
going to
totally
say,
different country.
I've seen the podcast you did with Ken, and I think people should go and look at that. So everybody that's watching this, if you haven't seen it, go to Tawanda's profile and look for that video. It's also on YouTube, but we'll put all the details to the hand. So just putting in a plug there. But sorry, carry on.
Okay, no, that's cool. Any plug is good. So and there's one thing that he said to me that resonated, and he said that every time they went to a major championships, because I said to him, you always had this air of invincibility. You always look calm. You always look like you meant business, and you look disappointed when you didn't perform well, when you would have run a phenomenal time, just because you didn't get gold or whatever. And he said, we had a sports psychologist on our team every time we traveled. And when I thought about Zimbabwe, it was kind of like the 18 where you get these different characters and they're together. You just meet up at the competition. You're expected to run fast, and it's just the physical. And you've only met up with each other for about 3 days before you actually compete together. And if Zimbabwe as a nation in sports invested in sports psychology and sports mentorship, then that would help, with performances. So going back to your question, this is a personal quest to help myself overcome, because as I mentioned earlier, it's taken me 16 years to realize and start to overcome. But what this also is, it's a journey to help the current crop and the future crop look at not just the physical aspects of training, but the importance of mentorship and the psychological aspects of training. It's one thing to say you're very fast, but it's another thing to show. So saying and showing and doing, they're different things.
Yeah.
They're very, very different things.
Yeah.
And my coach would say, there's one time I competed and I didn't do well. And my coach was like, you were supposed to have got into the final. He had belief in me. I didn't have belief in myself. And very few people can have self-belief.
Yeah.
But it takes other people, it takes your circle to help you with your belief. So in my journey to overcome, I'm also looking to help other people to overcome as well. And when we as Zimbabweans get into a scenario where we're going to a world championship, it's not just a coach and a manager and 2 athletes. It's going to be, because of the physical and mental performance, it's going to be 10, 20 athletes. It's going to be whatever managers in their sports. It's going to be the chef de mission if it's an Olympics, but there's also going to be the sports psychologist and the sports therapist. The sports therapist and massage therapist is going to help with the physical, but the sports psychologist is going to help with the mental performance as well. So that's the aim, and talking to the younger generation, because I've been there, done that. There are things I haven't done, but there's a lot I have done, and I've learned lessons from it. So I'll be able to speak to others about it.
Yeah. So any regrets at all? I kind of know the answer to that one, but I just thought I'd ask.
It's funny because when I spoke to Ken Harden, I asked him about regrets, and he was actually on another podcast. He was asked about regrets, and he said, maybe there are things I could have done differently, but to say that I regret it, I don't. Now, part of me, the part that's overcoming regrets not doing certain things. I ran 45:26. I was training like a mid 44 person. And that's a lot. So it didn't translate. That part of me regrets not doing it. The part of me that doesn't regret is the fact that I am in the Hall of Fame at university I have competed in African championships, All Africa Games, Commonwealth Games, World Championships, Olympic Games, a multitude of things. I've won races against very, very good guys in front of a lot of people. And I'm respected by people. People still, you know, will talk to me and say, hey, Tawanda, I remember when you used to run in Zim. I remember when you ran. And, you know, I'm thinking, it's cool that this person is appreciating what I did. I'm not appreciating what I did. I didn't think I achieved enough. But it's humbling when you get someone else who's in your sport, you know, saying, well done.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, it's, there are regrets, but there shouldn't be regrets.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a bit of an enigma, isn't it? And I think that's something I struggle with as well. I mean, I mentioned I played rugby quite competitively, more at schoolboy level. I didn't go on to maybe do what maybe some people would have expected I might have done. And it's funny because even though gearing up to this conversation with you, I was thinking, I don't know whether it's an age thing, you know, approaching 40 and all that kind of stuff, but you know, but I find myself going back and thinking a lot to my sort of those school days, and particularly sport. Sport has just been such a sport made me who I am. I mean, I know obviously there's so many different things. I mean, obviously my mother is a huge influence, and but my mother was the one who got me to a school that was, you know, very, I like to call it in terms of ratio, sort of 60-40 in terms of sport to academics. And I just loved sport, and I excelled more than I did in sport than I did in academia. But I find myself lately, maybe it's because of the lockdown, I don't know, but you know, thinking about all the things that I didn't do. And it's funny because also you mentioned mentorship, and also you also mentioned success at the beginning, which I'm going to go back to in a minute. But the mentorship side is also quite crucial because I left school and I came to the UK and I kind of got a half scholarship at university to play rugby. But in terms of the next level, because there were other players I was playing with that had, you know, that were playing for clubs, which linked into which linked into part of the scholarship. And I wasn't really doing it. I was just happy to just play at university. But I feel like I could have taken my game to the next level. And part of me does have those regrets, but also part of me doesn't have regrets because sometimes your experience is what makes you. So, and I find myself in the last few weeks thinking about like, just kind of like, it's almost like sometimes I feel like Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future, because I almost immediately transport myself to one particular period. And I was just like, okay, but how come I didn't play so many games like this or so many games like that? And I had the potential. You know, I had, you know, a really top professional athlete who had represented the country when he was a professional, and he saw something in me, and I feel like to a certain extent I didn't live up to his expectations, and 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 some it doesn't hurt, but it just makes you go back to that a lot. But maybe it's because now that I've got a daughter and yeah, I'm getting a little bit older, I'm looking at that and I'm like, well, now I know how to mentor my own daughter, and I do a little bit of rugby coaching as well for kids, and you know, it's those kind of things don't hit me when I'm coaching the kids, but in a sort of subconscious way, it helps my coaching, if that makes sense, because I'm like, look, you're here because they know they love the sport. I mean, these kids are like, you know, ages 3 to 7. So they know they love being outdoors. They know outdoors. They know they love running around and kicking a ball and all that kind of stuff. But it's making them understand as early as you can and as easy as I can that this game is about enjoyment, and always try your best. But actually, you know, them having that mentorship is important. So that's just something I've never had. But yeah, so that was just like, you know, just something I just wanted to kind of match up with what you were saying.
You see, we're a product of our own experiences, and the fact that I've gone through what I've gone through, I'm able to relate to certain things. And sometimes when I'm mentoring or coaching, I'm able to use personal experiences, you know, to relate to what someone is going through. A lot of times when you're an athlete who's only known success, strictly success, it can go against you when you're coaching others, because you're coaching from being on a pedestal the whole time and not knowing failure. And sometimes it's hard to translate. And also, what I wanted to mention that I haven't mentioned in podcast or in other talks is that you hear people saying that being an athlete, you've got a regimented timetable schedule, the way you practice, with your eating and everything, you know what to do. So your skills are transferable to the outside world, what they call the real world. But the thing is, when you're training and competing, you're in your own little bubble. And that's the only bubble that you know. So once you start to get out of that bubble, it's a different thing
like
altogether.
Different reality or something, isn't it?
It's totally different.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot of transferable skills, but going out from athletics, it was tough. And I remember my father, sitting down with me and saying, "So Tawanda, what do you want to do?" And I was thinking, "What do you mean? When you stop running?" And the thought of him talking to me about that, in my mind, my first reaction was, how dare you talk to me about after running? I've still got a good 7 years, 10 years of running in me. But the fact, in retrospect, I should have thought about it, because when I stopped running, I didn't know what to do. And admittedly, this is new to a lot of people, to most people. Only a few people know. But depression started setting in, and anxiety, because I really didn't know what to do. I'm not in my comfort zone anymore. It's not a regimented timetable. This is now what they call reality. It's totally different. And I wasn't prepared for it. And I denied it for a long time as well. So it's very, very tough. And there was even a survey of Olympic athletes. And it was seen that in this survey, the responses show that people around my age have suffered depression after competing at the high caliber that they used to compete. And that's because there's that transition from sport to real life. And I spoke to an Olympian, and she's competed in many Olympics and done a lot. And she said that when she was just about done with school, she had enough.
Right.
She didn't want to just go further with athletics. She was done. And if you compare that to me, I just wanted to keep on going and going and going, because I hadn't proved to myself, and I felt I hadn't proved to other people what I was capable of. And that's what's helped me with my journey, starting the podcast and talking about it. That's what's starting to help me overcome.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's a real eye opener. Yeah, I mean, thanks a lot for sharing. I think a lot of people can take different things from this. I think for me, I think the main thing is just being like, things are not that dissimilar to other people's journey in terms of, dealing with the mental side of things. And one of the things I always say in some of the podcasts I've done pre this one is that, to people out there, particularly men, I mean, obviously they've got so many issues going on, is that whatever you're dealing with, I mean, I know now we're kind of in the pandemic, so we're all kind of in the same boat, but, it's important to have somebody to talk to. And I think that's kind of one of the things that we'll summarize from this. It's important to have someone to talk to. And to some people, it might feel like they don't. I mean, obviously, in a sporting perspective, like you've just kind of highlighted, sometimes what you've got is maybe you've got other athletes that you're traveling with, and then you've got your sports coach, and then maybe you might have a massage therapist, I think you said. But in terms of having somebody to speak to about just kind of what you're experiencing, or just kind of to help you process things, a lot of us sometimes don't have that outlet. And I think for me, I always bang on about golf. I mean, I know you spotted my golf clubs in the background, because for me, that's been my coping mechanism. I mean, at the moment, obviously, we're dealing with working from home. So, I mean, I've still got pressures even though I've got work from home. And whilst I've not been able to go out and do my golf, you know, I've been okay, you know, but that might not be the same for other people. But, you know, I think it's just been really good to speak to you, because obviously it's good for people to get an insight into how it was with you as a, you know, as an athlete, as a professional runner, a professional competitive person. But there's one other question I wanted to ask you, and it's more of a side comment. But do you have any memorable moments or funny moments from when you used to compete, whether that's out on the track?
Oh man, there's lots of them. There's
We haven't
one
got
where I'm
enough
talking.
time, isn't it? We should have started.
Yeah,
Maybe that should have been the first question.
There's one that I mentioned in my talk when I'm talking with the Zimbabwean Sprint Kings. That's the record holders of the 100 meters, 200 meters, 400 meters.
Okay.
It was Manchester Commonwealth Games, and I was happy to be at the Commonwealth Games, and it was time for me to go to the dining hall, and the dining hall was quite a way away.
Right.
So I put on my shoes and I start walking, and it was quite a walk. I get about 3/4 of the way. I look down and I realize I'm wearing two different shoes. And they're different colors as well. And I'm thinking, okay, how many people have seen me, and how many people think, what the hell is this guy doing? And the choice was either to continue and go and eat, or go back. And it wasn't fashionable to wear two different shoes at that time. We're talking 2002. So I had to rush back. I had to rush back to the dorms, to put on my shoes.
Yeah.
In terms of running, there's quite a few. There's one with a 4x4 relay. I wasn't on that at that time. And this guy, he was running the 400 leg. The other guy took off too soon. And the guy was just so tired that he ended up throwing the baton to the guy. The other guy caught it and he started running. They ended up getting disqualified because you are not allowed to throw the thing. You have to pass it. And there's various other things, but
moments, yeah.
if you get a lot of track guys sit down and talk, it's just laughs throughout. When I had the talk with the Spring Kings, we only spoke about a few things, but you could tell, I'll just say something and then the guys would just start laughing because that's what it is. It's kind of like it's when you get together, it's almost like, with team sports, with rugby or whatever, there's a lot of banter and a lot of laughs. Athletics is more individual, but there's opportunities to get together and just have a lot of fun as well. There's a lot. When you ask me about reminiscing and stuff, I have this big smile on my face because there's a lot of stuff that used to happen. What happens across the ocean or what happens wherever stays wherever. So there's a lot of good, bad, naughty stories that happen.
Yeah, and I guess that's what makes the good memories. But listen, thanks very much for taking the time out and speaking to me obviously about your journey and kind of some of the things that you're doing now. It's just been really great to have a chat with you. So I hope we'll get something from this. I think they'll do. And I think for me, as I've said before, it's just kind of coming to the conclusion, which I kind of knew anyway, is that there really is not that much difference because at the end of the day, we're all human. And we're all going through the same thing. So I mean, I invite people to to comment, add their comments if they believe that's true or not true, because everybody will have their opinions. But Tawanda Chiwera, thanks very much.
Thank you, much appreciated.